The Biden administration has been working on a deal like this for months. Here's what the president said yesterday when he announced it.
The road to this deal has not been easy. I've worked in foreign policy for decades. This is one of the toughest negotiations I've ever experienced. And we reached this point because of the pressure that Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States.
For more, we are joined now by Deputy National Security Advisor Jonathan Feiner. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I want to get right to this question of whether there's a setback. Netanyahu says that Hamas is backing out of key parts of the deal. Hamas says that's not true. What do you know about what's really going on here?
Well, what I can tell you is we fully expect the deal to proceed as described yesterday and on the timeline that we have laid out. So implementation beginning as soon as Sunday with a ceasefire and the release of the first hostages. What's being discussed now is what was described by the mediators yesterday when they announced the deal, which is a set of implementation details and conditions that are going to be a challenge throughout the implementation of this deal, which is going to extend well into the next administration. That is always an issue when you're talking about complex deals that have a number of facets and when you're talking about, frankly, two parties who have zero trust in each other. And so we are going to work very carefully with all the parties to make sure this gets implemented on time. We fully expect it to do that. And the Qataris and the Egyptians, who have been the mediators of this deal, are our partners in this effort and feel the same way.
So, Jonathan, what are the U.S. communications with Benjamin Netanyahu right now? Are you all actually talking to him?
So the president has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu now twice in the last few days, including yesterday after the agreement was reached in Doha. We are in multiple times a day contact with all of his senior team, with all of our counterparts in Israel, and we will be, I think, in that pattern of engagement throughout the implementation of this deal, because it's going to take that kind of intensive discussion and engagement to make sure the details get implemented the way they've been described on paper.
You can imagine how unsettling this must be for people who are following this very closely, who have a personal interest that there's a possible setback. After that conversation, does President Biden think that he has a deal, or are you confident that this will get done, despite the last-minute back and forth?
President Biden feels exactly as he did yesterday, that this is an incredibly important moment in the history of this region, certainly in this conflict, which has unsettled so many lives inside Gaza, for the hostages, first and foremost, who have been living under unconscionable conditions now for well over a year, and honestly giving some light and some hope for a possible better future in the near term. That is exactly how the president described this deal yesterday. That continues to be how he sees things, and we are going to be working day in, day out to make sure this gets implemented on time, and that's what we expect.
Jonathan, briefly, can you describe the collaboration between your team, the Biden administration, and the incoming team from the president-elect and his folks? How did you work together to get this deal done? And what is your feeling about what they're going to implement as they come into office next week?
So, look, the president was quite clear that as the negotiations moved on and as it became clear that the timeline for implementing the deal was going to spread into a new administration, that we would need to, and he directed us to, work very closely with our incoming counterparts from the president-elect's team to make sure that they were, one, apprised of all the details of the deal, and two, on board fully with how this would have to be implemented. To their credit, they have been saying all the right things, asking this get done as quickly as possible, pressing both sides, as we have, to try to get this across the line, and that happened yesterday. And as the president said, this is what he believes is responsible for American leadership, and I think a good example of the incoming team and the outgoing team working together for an outcome. But in the field, this was driven entirely by our negotiating team. Brett McGurk, the president's senior envoy for the Middle East, spent 13 consecutive days hammering this out in Doha. President Trump's team shuttled back and forth among a number of cities in the Middle East in support. So all in all, this is a very good outcome. And, you know, Washington is not always a model of this sort of bipartisan collaboration, but in this case, it worked quite well.
Everyone hoping that this deal will get done. Millions of people all around the world. Jonathan Feiner, thank you very much. We appreciate it.